Okay, that's me had the nod now from my associate Emma to say that we're good to go. So thanks very much everyone for joining us today. My name's Kelly Fraser. I'm the North of Scotland KTP Centre Manager, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's KTP Scotland Associate Seminar. For those of you who are new to the world of knowledge transfer partnerships, KTP is a three-way partnership between businesses, universities and associates who work together in collaboration to deliver innovative projects to support business growth. The KTP programme's been running now for over 45 years, which I think is a really good indication of how important it is to the UK. And currently we have 800 companies, 100 universities and over 800 associates working on KTP projects across the country in a range of different industry sectors and academic disciplines. Today's event is an opportunity for some of our KTP associates who are nearing the end of their projects to present to you on the innovative work that they've been undertaking in their partnerships and reflect a little bit about their experiences and their impressions of working on the KTP programme. There'll also be an opportunity for you to pose questions to our associates after each presentation, and these can be project specific, so you might want to pick up on something that they've spoken about in their presentations, or they might be more general about their experiences and their impressions of working on the KTP. I'm delighted to say we're also joined today by Richard Lamb, our KTP Programme Manager from Innovate UK. Thanks for joining us, Richard. You're always a good supporter of our KTP Scotland activities, and I'm sure you'll have some really good questions up your sleeve for our associates. So no pressure there, Richard. The format for today's session is as follows. It's going to be chaired by my colleague Ian Heywood, who is our North of Scotland Knowledge Transfer Advisor. So thanks again, Ian, for agreeing to do that for us today. We've got 4 associates who are going to be presenting on a range of projects covering industry sectors and research areas such as food and drink, agriculture, quantum technology and microbiology. So we've got quite a good range of topics for you to listen to today. Each presentation will be followed by an opportunity for questions, which I mentioned before. If you can post these in the chat function, Ian will pick them up and ask the associates to respond to them in turn. Please bear in mind that your chat is visible to everybody on the call, so don't include anything confidential in your questions, please. At the end of the session, we'd also like to invite all of our KTP associates who are on the call to stay on the line. This gives you an opportunity for some informal networking with your colleagues. We've always found this to be a really valuable element of the Associate Seminar programme, and it's particularly useful for associates who are just starting out on their KTP journey to learn a little bit about the experiences that their colleagues have had, and it's an opportunity to build up some good links and contacts for support throughout the projects. We'll be sharing a feedback link at the end of the survey as well, so I'd be really grateful if everybody could take the time to complete that and send it back to us, because that will be helpful for us when we're planning future events as well. Over the course of the session, feel free to leave your cameras switched on or off as you prefer, we don't mind, but I do need you all to make sure that your microphones are muted throughout so that there's less opportunity for distraction or interruption during presentations and questions. I hope you find today's event interesting and enjoyable, and thanks again for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate that, particularly given that we're in the middle of the summer holiday period, so thanks for that. I'm not going to say anything more now. I'm going to hand over to Ian to start the event. So over to you, Ian. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you for the invite to chair today's session. It's always a great opportunity to participate in these and to hear from, let's be really specific here. These are the innovators of the future working in some very exciting areas. And without further ado, I'm going to kick us off. I'm not going to say anything other than introduce the names and the institutions and the universities, because I don't want to steal the thunder of each of the associates. I'll let them introduce their own topics in more detail. Do ask questions. So as you're listening, do make a few questions. It makes it much more exciting for them all to get some feedback from yourselves. So please do think of at least one question you could ask, and I'll pull a few out of the chat as we go. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Elliott Erskine. Elliot is working with the James Hutton Institute and Intelligent Growth Solutions. Elliot, do you want to take us away and share with us what you've been up to?
Good morning, everyone. also meant to ask Ian to let everybody know if you could turn up your volume a little bit for Elliot's presentation. It's a little bit quieter than the others. Just about to start.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Elliott Erskine. I am in the final year of my KTP between the James Hutton Institute and IGS, and I'm looking at microbiology and vertical farming, risk, flux, and food safety. So a little bit about my background. I grew up in the middle of Fife. As you can see here, that's my home. I then went to Edinburgh University for my bachelor's, and that was in infectious disease. And I did like a summer project looking at parasites and immune responses to parasites. And that led me to do my PhD in Dundee, so just a little bit north. And that was in molecular microbiology. And it was during my PhD that I realized that I didn't really want to kind of go along the academic pipeline. I wasn't really interested in being a PI, and I was actually more interested in applied science and research and development. So my supervisor at the time recommended that I apply for this KTP thing. I'd never heard of it. So when I went to the interview, I wasn't sure what to expect. And obviously I was really excited to kind of get through the interview process and get started at the project. A little bit about the partnership itself. So IGS are a Scottish agri-tech startup. They develop and deploy vertical farming technology for customers. And the Hutton, they focus on fundamental research in kind of food, energy, environmental security. And thankfully, both my academic and my company are situated 5 minutes walk from each other. I know that's can be a little bit of a problem for others, but yeah, that's me doing the liaison between the Hutton and IGS. So a little bit about vertical farming kind of falls under this heading of total controlled environment agriculture, where we kind of modify the environmental conditions like temperature, humidity, and the LED light recipes to optimize the plant growth and development, enabling the vertical farm to produce really high quality, really high throughput crops. And these are predominantly things like leafy greens and herbs. But we've also ventured into things like soft fruit, mainly for like propagation, which is a big thing in Tayside in Scotland. The berries are a huge staple. So I was brought in as a microbiologist to look at the impact of the microbiology on both crop quality and food safety. Looking at this, describing, quantifying, mitigating any microbial hazards that could be present in vertical farming, as this is quite an under-researched area at the moment for kind of these high-tech indoor farms, and the methodology for this. So I worked on developing a risk framework for the IGS vertical farm, identifying any of the microbial hazards, quantifying the microbes of different compartments in the farm, and then finally using all this to develop a quantitative model of the hazard, and then more of like a qualitative risk register for other hazards. So some of the outcomes. Obviously, the quantitative microbial risk assessment, the QMRA, of the irrigation water. We did this using the Monte Carlo simulation, and that is in its quality control phase, shall we say. And the risk framework and the qualitative risk register for the farm is well on its way to completion. I have about 4 to 6 months left. Yeah, so one of the other outcomes that we're working on is a pilot user interface for communicating the risk assessment with customers, kind of trying to avoid that very daunting 400-page report feel of sort of risk assessments generally, and then just to have it look a little bit more interactive. So some further outcomes for the KTP, I've worked on the microbiome taxonomy, looking at the water, the substrate of the farm, the plant rhizosphere and phyllosphere, so the root area and the edible portions of the leafy greens. And that's been really, really interesting work, and we're obviously hoping to get that published either by the end or just at the other end of the KTP. I've also been heavily involved in ongoing research and development for improvements to the technology, and that includes things like the HVAC, the water, and then the fertigation. And that's been really interesting to be integrated into the sort of hardware team and the engineering, and having to communicate with like a really broad audience. That's been really interesting as well. I've also been involved in helping develop some of the standards that will be part of the industry going forward. So things like Global Gap, ran some focus groups, and I was involved in those. So that was really eye-opening to kind of interact with other technology providers and other producers. So technically, my technical development, it's been really, really, really good to. So obviously my background is in molecular microbiology from a PhD. That was a very wet lab kind of based project, and as part of the KTP, I've really been able to move forward into sort of bioinformatics, which I'd never really done before. So for the microbiome analysis, I took the samples from the farm and went all the way through to the final analysis and the graphs at the end. That was really good. I've done training courses with our studio and the mother tool, which we use to do the microbiome analysis. I also forayed into diagnostics, so I did a little bit of this at university. So it was really fun to kind of go back to something that I'd kind of vaguely remembered. So this is a lettuce with like a little bit of sclerotinia. It's a fungus. So I took samples to the lab and then stripped them out, and then I got DNA, etc. So that was really cool. So my chemistry is a little bit so-so, but through the KTP, I've really developed technically in this area, and looking at optimizing the fertigation for the vertical farm. So that's been cool. So moving on from technical development, my personal development. Pre-COVID, I presented at a number of conferences. I was at the Royal Highland Show with the IGS team, showing off our basil. And then kind of post-COVID, did a whole bunch of virtual conferences, did some various training courses in with data carpentry and in-house, looking at different ways of sort of data management and bioinformatics. And then finally, this year I did some leadership training, looking at kind of my future at IGS. So that's been really cool. So what's next? Finish my KTP would be the main one. That's I've got another couple of months left of that, and I've been really I'm really glad that IGS has seen value in the work that I've done, and they're looking at hiring me on after my KTP as an operations scientist. So I feel like my technical development has continued to kind of progress. So sort of my next step would be looking at developing like my leadership and management skills, and we've started to make headway into that recently. And then for me, like the future, like I really hope that one day I'll be able to lead kind of my own research and development team in the future. And that would be really cool. So just the KTP's really opened up a lot of doors that I wouldn't necessarily have seen if I'd stuck in academia and did the postdocs and the other postdoc and the PI. As an aside, I've also done some product photography for IGS, showing off their water spinach, their Kailan, and basil, for example. So yeah, the KTP is just do a lot of different things. Thank you. So if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them in real life.
So thanks, Elliot. Can everyone hear me back okay? Thumbs up. I'm going to kick us off with one question, and then Richard's got a question in there, but please put some others in the chat. Elliot, first and foremost, great presentation. I was involved with an early project with IGS, and so it's great to see that progressing. And I just wanted to thank you for bringing us up to speed on that. And the idea of moving into soft fruit again, particularly where it's based, I found fascinating. And wow, congratulations that they're looking at taking you on afterwards. And it's a really important industry. My question is, you've done a lot of modeling and you've looked at what some of the challenges might be with the sort of, I guess, disease element. Have you done any work around looking at how you would control outbreaks if they happened within the vertical farm?
Yeah, so that's been an ongoing area of the R&D team, looking at widespread potential outbreaks in the air and in the water. So I've been sort of really strongly involved in developing the technical side of what we do immediately afterwards. And that's obviously everyone, customers need to know what to do as well. So going from like the theoretical, how do we actually control the outbreaks? But most of the technology and most of the input I've had is how do we prevent one from starting? So the majority of my risk mitigation work has been in how do we completely prevent the outbreak? But then if one does occur, here is the protocol, A, B, and C, depending on whether it's, for example, a water mold or like a fungal spore that's in the air, or a bacterial pathogen. So that's been a big part of the work as well.
Thanks, Elliot. And the prevention side obviously makes more sense, because if you can stop it in the first place, that's the best. Because I'm guessing in a vertical farm, if it breaks out, it will be a real challenge to control it. I'm going to see if I can bring Richard in. Emma, can I bring Richard onto a mic? Can he switch on his mic and ask his own question?
Yeah.
Do you want to go with your question?
Hi there, Elliot. Again, echo what Ian said, a really, really good presentation. I had the great pleasure of coming up to James Hutton probably back in 2018 and seeing the facilities you've got there. I'm just wondering how your project linked into the other KTPs that IGS have had. And as a sort of second question, completely unrelated, what are the best things in your opinion about doing a KTP, and how would you start trying to persuade other postdocs to look at KTP and come and have that experience that you've had? Sorry, lots of questions there.
That's totally fine. So I briefly met Matthew, like the previous KTP associate. So he was there during my interview, and then his came to a close literally just as I was starting. So we didn't overlap a great deal, but his work on light responses has been really useful for the plant science in general. So although my work doesn't overlap like a great deal with what he did, as I move into my operations role, it will. So for my work, I've only looked at the light responses in terms of its impact on pathogens, so only a very slight overlap. But yeah, Matthew was like instrumental in like his tour going through the farm was definitely a huge factor in me getting really excited about the project. And in terms of persuading, I rave about KTPs to everyone I know. So the best part for me, working in like a interdisciplinary team, has been one of the optimal things. So in academia, you do tend to work in a silo. You're quite isolated. It's your project. You have ownership of it, which is quite, it builds a sense of independence. But when you come to work in a company, you really do need to learn how to communicate to like a really wide audience. Sorry, it's a shared office. It's not ideal, but yeah, it's really good to learn how to communicate to like a really non-technical audience. So I'd say that's one of the best parts.
Cool. Really glad you've enjoyed it, Elliot.
I think we might have lost Ian for a minute there, so I'm just going to ask you my question now, Elliot, seeing as I can, because I've got the opportunity to jump in and do that. So really good presentation, thanks very much for that. One of the things I was interested in was when you spoke about having to develop your pilot user interface for the risk assessments, and I just wondered how you approached that to make sure that they were intuitive and interactive, because it's a pretty big ask for that.
Yes, I have like almost no background in developing these kind of tools. So what I've basically built is the engine and the barest user interface. So what this will mean is that customers will basically be taken through the risk assessment step by step, and then they'll essentially get a downloadable report with like a traffic light system that will kind of guide them through things that are higher risk, things that are lower risk. And so what I've built is an engine. Someone much better at user interface will take that and make that something more slick. But that's been really interesting. So this has just been, I built this web app in R that will act as this kind of baseline. And I basically based this innovation on conversations I had with customers and like the realization that like most people don't have a background in biology, let alone microbiology. So just kind of crossing that bridge of communication and to kind of improve, it's almost just like an educational tool, really. And then they can come to me with questions and we can kind of work through that. It gives that basis for that discussion. So I basically just started on like Googling and YouTube. There's a lot you can learn online.
Kelly, thanks for jumping in there. And Elliot, great answer. Sorry, I dashed out there. Postal delivery, birthdays in our house, had to get there before they ran off and took it away or else I'd be in trouble. Elliot, fantastic. Some great answers to your questions. I am so excited with that project continuing, and I know that it will continue with you in a new role. On that note, though, I'm going to draw it to a close, if that's all right, and introduce our next speaker. So maybe we can give Elliot a round of virtual applause or wave your hands, just show some appreciation. Louise Gamble is now going to be presenting to us. Louise is also working with the James Hutton Institute, bit of a theme running here, and she's working on a project I'm fascinated to find out more about because it's to do with Scottish honeyberry growers. And as Matt knows when he gets up later, I love a good berry project. So let's find out from Louise how that's been going on with her KTP.
Hi, thank you for inviting me to talk at the seminar today. I'm Louise Gamble. I'm the KTP associate working on the Honeyberry project, and I'm a few months away from completing the project. Just a bit of background about me. Prior to starting the KTP position, I completed my PhD in 2016 in molecular plant pathology and obtained some post-doctoral research positions mainly focused around understanding the molecular mechanisms of crop pathogens or pest interactions. And really my knowledge and expertise lies within agricultural crops and sustainable food systems, which is one of the main reasons why I applied to the KTP associate programme. So in particular, the theme of the project was of real interest due to my knowledge and experience. And I wanted to use my skills and experience to make a direct impact through knowledge transfer while gaining an insight into the business side and developing skills in this area. Managing my own project and delivering on the objectives which would result in transformational changes within the company really appealed to me. I was also attracted to the training and development and career opportunities that would enhance my career in the future. So the overall aim of the project was to introduce and establish a new soft fruit crop in Scotland called the honeyberry. My project is linked with the Scottish Honeyberry Growers, a cooperative of farmers who realise the economic and agricultural and environmental importance of novel crop introduction and diversification on farms. The co-op, as you can see pictured here, consists of 9 growers, with the majority having no experience of growing soft fruit. The academic partner is the James Hutton Institute, who deliver fundamental and applied science to drive the sustainable use of land and natural resources. The project has been very diverse, as the growers were still really at an early stage within their business when I came on board. So to commercialise the honeyberry, my objectives focused on 3 main areas. So agronomy, identifying the best growing practices, understanding the crop's growth and development, scientific research, identifying nutritional compounds for marketing purposes, what really makes it special and stand out from other berries. I was also involved with the marketing and promotion to put honeyberries in the spotlight. So the next few slides will detail the main objectives and the outcomes of these. So we needed to understand how this crop grows in Scotland and provide the co-op with knowledge of the optimal growing methods to minimise costs and maximise profits in the future. There's been 3 years of data collected and collated, analysed on a range of areas, including the growth and development, feeding regimes, the effects of weather changes and the Scottish climate, what pests and diseases do honeyberry attract, and what treatment strategies are the best to use, the flowering patterns and development of the crop over the season, also information on the harvest of the berry and the yields that different varieties produce, and importantly the characteristics of the berry, their shape, their size and their taste. This really leads to what market or what place in the market these different berries can go into. The main output of this information or this knowledge transfer is to enable the growers to become expert growers of honeyberry and be able to select the best varieties for growing in Scotland, which at the moment they are doing. In addition, the data collected forms the Growers Guide, which can be used for the co-op and for them to share their expertise in the future once the honeyberry becomes even more established in areas of Scotland and throughout the UK. So to help with the marketing strategy and provide honeyberry as the next superberry, I analysed a range of nutritional and health beneficial compounds and compared that to levels in other Scottish grown berries. So this slide shows some data that's been collected on a range of different honeyberry varieties and some of the nutritional compounds that were analysed, including anthocyanin content and antioxidant capacity. The most important part was to be able to translate these results that could be used by the cooperative to encourage buyers and help with sales. So we focused really on the healthy compounds such as these anthocyanins and antioxidants, providing data and infographics that can easily show the high levels of the compounds in honeyberry in comparison to other berry types. I also confirmed the presence of a particular compound called C3G or cyanidin-3 glucoside, which has already had a lot of research reporting its benefits and potential impact on health and diseases. And all of this research is due to be published this year, which will give the growers further credibility. It's also helped to increase interest in sales from targeted companies in the food and drinks industry and has increased interest from consumers. So as the honeyberry is a novel crop and has been relatively unknown, within Scotland and the UK, it was important for the project that we took as many opportunities to showcase the honeyberry and obtain feedback from consumers. So this feedback provided the growers with invaluable information from consumers about the taste of the berry, would people buy it, and whether or not they actually liked the berry. And we received some really positive feedback from consumers, which was really beneficial for the growers to hear. And this also helps with further marketing and developing which varieties will be used in different products. Prior to COVID, a lot of events were attended, and we managed to obtain media coverage to help promote honeyberry. But even with COVID restrictions, when events were not accessible, we still managed some positive outcomes during this time. It really gave the project and the cooperative time to work on social media. And we have now established an Instagram page, and further to that, a Facebook page as well. So ultimately, all of the objectives have really fed into creating products of honeyberry. The KTP has helped to create the first and future products using honeyberry by understanding berry varieties and processing qualities. The growers are near to establishing a frozen honeyberry product. This will be released before the end of the year, but in the background they're also looking at puree and dried products. We also have a honeyberry bar product due to be released by the end of summer. And other items that can be found locally include ice cream, sorbets and jam. We have also had larger orders recently from gin and winemaking companies who will use the honeyberry in their product. So all in all, the KTP in terms of product delivery has been very successful. So what's next? I'm currently starting to look for my next career opportunity. The KTP has enhanced my skills and experience and has opened up a wider range of career possibilities that I can apply for. And with that being said, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Scottish Honeyberry Growers, the James Hutton Institute and Innovate UK for the funding, training and support really throughout the project. And there's been many others who played a small or large part in the success of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Wow. I mean, gee, a fascinating presentation. I wanted to know the detail of what had actually happened. And I'd heard a lot about the project because I was interested personally in it as a cooperative. But to see that range of products emerging at the end from a single KTP is fantastic. My first question is, where do I get the ice cream? Yeah, where's the ice cream, Louise?
So at the moment, it's been sold, as I said, locally. So it's in Dundee at Arbuckle's farm. So it's kind of one of the side products, mainly of Arbuckle's, but it's obviously something that the co-op will probably expand into. But yeah, you could pick it up at Arbuckle's in Dundee.
Put the postcode in the chat. I'm going to head down there. All right, that was brilliant. Now, a technical question first is how did you find working with a cooperative group? Because most KTPs have like one lead company, but you had multiple growers involved. How was that?
There's both positive and negative. So it was challenging. I'm not going to lie. It was a challenge because you have such a range of different personalities and different insights about things. And because it wasn't an official kind of business that had been established, it was a cooperative. These guys are really busy. You know, they're farmers. They've really not got a lot of time on their hands. But I think the most positive thing that came from that was being able to, one, using the training and development through the KTP and pushing myself to try and find the kind of optimal way to communicate with them, the most optimal way to push forward with the KTP So it was about being adaptable. So I think my adaptability skills have definitely increased because it is completely different than working with an already established business.
Yeah, no, I agree, Louise, and I think one thing you can look to definitely if you're working on a KTP is how to develop those range of communication skills with so many different stakeholders, and yours being more complex. Great question. We've got a question from Niall in the chat. I don't know, Niall, would you like to ask the question live?
Yeah, I can do. Just what intrigued me at the start there, you mentioned that this consortium had very little experience. I think it was with soft fruit rather than honeyberries in particular. What techniques did you use to develop that understanding? Was it really a sort of desk-based study of the typical growth rates, yields, etc., or were there a lot of practical experiments involved in that?
So when I came on board the project, the honeyberries had been introduced into the Dundee farm for a couple of years. So all but one of the farmers or the growers weren't soft fruit farmers, but Stuart from Dundee was. So a lot of the kind of information I would take directly from him initially because of the fact it was a new crop for myself. And then would relate that to the cooperative. Different communication channels really, and again, it was a bit of a trial and error as well to see which communication channels were better depending on what information needed to be kind of relayed. But yeah, kind of setting up some sort of kind of easy to follow plans of where they should be going with their honeyberry crop, and also kind of providing information from different countries that had maybe already experienced different growing practices. So a lot of the information was taken from Stuart, that from the kind of information he had and experience, but a lot from other countries as well. So we have kind of contacts in Poland and Canada that were established as well to see kind of what their growing practices were. So it was just really up to me to try and kind of put that information towards the co-op and kind of, I think in the initial part of the project, the main thing was to get them as part of a group. So although they were cooperative, they didn't kind of come together as much. So that was kind of one of my main aims, and get them together, get involved in meetings, getting them involved in different things so that they would take an understanding of the different development and agronomy of honeyberry.
That's great, thanks. And I would also just add, I have had the privilege of tasting some of these, and they are fantastic. I highly recommend them.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Yeah, Louise, you'll have to get Niall doing your piece on social media if he hasn't done one already. Nothing like a good customer testimonial to do
exactly.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Richard's got a couple of questions for you. Richard, do you want to ask those?
Yeah, hi Louise. Another great presentation, so thank you for that. I've got so many questions. What do they taste like? Are they sweet? Are they kind of, tell us a bit more about the honeyberry, because I've never heard. I remember the project coming in, and I remember us talking about it going, this looks interesting,
yeah,
but never tasted a honeyberry. So sell me the honeyberry experience.
So obviously honeyberries, they are completely unique to any other berry, and a lot of people have a different taste experience, and that's quite dependent on the variety that you choose. So we have 10 different varieties in our orchard, and they all taste different, and that's why they're so interesting in terms of this new fruit, because they can enter a lot of different markets. But in terms of taste, a lot of people say it's a combination of many different things. So it could be from a blueberry and a raspberry. Some people say they have a taste of grape in there. More recently, I've found that cherry came towards my taste buds, and I thought, oh, that tastes a bit like cherry. They have a kind of distinct sweetness, but this kind of almost like a burst of zing at the end of it. They are hard to describe. I mean, even if you look up on the internet, it's people struggle to say exactly what they taste like. But again, it's good because they do have that uniqueness. but they taste like common things that people enjoy already.
Yeah.
But some can be more sweeter depending on Brix levels and acid levels. Some can be quite bitter. So some of them that haven't really been developed and are the original type of bushes, they're hardy bushes from Russia, colder countries. They're quite sour, and I think a lot of people in the past have tried the more sour versions and thought, oh, they're disgusting. But in actual fact, now we have a lot more better developed varieties that are sweeter and a lot more palatable. So,
and I guess your project's been able to quantify some of that sort of taste profile in each of the different varieties.
Yeah, I mean, we have obviously the kind of, we didn't go really deep into the complete chemical analysis of the kind of organoleptic side of things, so we didn't go down different routes for that, but we did look at Brix and acid and how that related to consumers' acceptance of berries. So yeah, we kind of have a list of different varieties and their taste profiles ranging from sweet to sour, and from after they've been processed as well. So a lot of the work that I did was on freeze-dried berries, because we didn't have fresh material at the time, because we do have quite a short season for honeyberry, because we're not as established as other crops. So a lot of the freeze-dried berries were tasted, and we got a kind of profile on each of the varieties that we had at the time. Well,
I've been working closely with the KTP Managers National Forum, looking for ingredients for a cocktail that we're going to have at our conference in December. I think we might have found our key ingredient here, honeyberry gin. But more importantly, I think you're in a situation that about 30% of KTP associates find themselves in, where at the end of the project there isn't a job for you. So first of all, I know, because I've worked on contract too over the years, how difficult a time that is. So keep the faith. There is something out there for you, but use the KTP networks that are available to you to reach out and make other people aware that you're in the job market, because I believe every KTP associate has a unique skill set and is hugely attractive to anybody that knows anything about KTPs. So if you're not already a member, sign up for the LinkedIn group for KTP associates, because you never know who out of that group, whose businesses might be hiring and might be interested in you. Make sure that you're using those connections that you've got through James Hutton and through hopefully your Ashbourne Hill groups and anything else. And if you are on LinkedIn, connect with me. And if you're in that situation where you are going to put a CV online and say, hey world, I'm here, I'll certainly share that with my contacts.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I'd just like to say it's not a case of where there's no position available, you know, the KTP hasn't benefited the growers. It's just that it's very timely in sense of, I think the KTP project was very, you know, it was needed at this time. But now what they need is something in sales and marketing to start generating and pushing that income forward. And because they're not an established business, they're a cooperative, they don't have those funds and resources to try and keep on the kind of science analysis and the kind of stuff that I've been doing. So it's just unfortunate that you know, it's just at this time they're needing a different direction, unfortunately. But I think in a couple of years' time, 4 to 5 years, I think then that's when they'll be needing a background of somebody again, either KTP or science or something along those lines, to develop, you know, more honeyberry varieties and stuff like that. But yeah, I think the KTP's really progressed the cooperative in many ways. So yeah,
and I think it's benefited you as well, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it definitely has. When I'm applying for different, I'm obviously looking for different posts at the moment. So there's definitely a lot of different skills that I can now put on my CV that can relate to a lot of job opportunities that I couldn't have applied for before if I was very similar to Elliot, just being kind of signposted down that kind of PI, whereas now you've got a little bit more opportunity to develop in other areas.
Well, good luck for the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Louise, there's a nice segue there to Elliot. You mentioned it, a question there. Elliot's got a question for you. Elliot, do you want to ask that question live?
Sure. The office is a little bit loud. I was just wondering what opportunity of personal development over the course of the KTP, like, did you find the most rewarding or valuable? Because I know you were saying obviously the development budget was really useful. So I was wondering what you thought was like the most bang for your buck, so to speak.
That's a great question, Elliot. What development opportunity was the most bang for your buck?
I think, and there's not been one specific area in terms of the training. I think it's been the diversity and the fact that I've been allowed to take as many different types of courses, because I've done like different things like communication courses, networking, confidence building. Probably those type of things have helped me kind of progress as a person within this role. But there's also been like a whole range of different, I've decided to take smaller courses because of time. I think that's the main kind of thing, is I should have maybe gave myself a bit more time to do more training and development, because what I plan to do now is trying to catch up with some that I've missed out on. But there's been a whole diverse range of, you know, data analysis. I can't even remember half of them because there's been so many, but a lot of different little pockets of courses that have just gave me that kind of nudge that I needed at the time. Or that have kind of helped me along the way. So I think it's the diversity and the fact that you can get to choose from a range of different things have really helped me progress, because I've needed a lot of diversity because of the project that I've been involved in.
Louise, I think that's a great answer to Elliot's question. It's the flexibility, isn't it? It's the flexibility that supporting budget allows, and we're very grateful to the funders for, because you can do what we call just in time, or I call whitewater learning. You can pick up the learning when you need it, relevant to your project, and apply it. I'm going to stop there. We're going to move on to the next speaker. Can we do the same again for Louise and show a round of appreciation to Louise's presentation? And, you know, let's drive up the sales of Honeyberries. Yeah, okay. Between us, we'll buy some. Right. We're going to move on now. I think we're going to stay with the berry theme, and I'm going to introduce Matt. Matt Hooper is one of my associates who's working with Abertay University and Colbeggie Fruits. Matt, let's hear about your project, please.
Hello and welcome. My name's Dr. Matt Hooper. I'm here today to talk to you about my KTP project, looking at the extraction and optimization of bioactives from outgrade fruit for commercial applications. And this is a joint project between Abertay University as a knowledge base and Colbeggie Fruits Limited. So how did I get into a KTP? Back in 2002, I was working as a sous chef at the Squire and Horse in West Sussex. It's a little local village restaurant, and felt I wasn't getting enough, so I went back to do my A-levels whilst still working as a chef. And luckily enough, in 2006, I came to Dundee to study zoology at the University of Dundee, and then moved on to do a MRes in Crops of the Future, because I felt I didn't get enough genetic and molecular biology experience within my undergraduate degree. That led me on to working as a laboratory technician in plant sciences lab at the University of Dundee, and also opened my eyes to the James Hutton Institute. And in 2014, I was lucky enough to undertake a PhD between the James Hutton Institute and Heywood University, looking at re-engineering the tropane alkaloid biosynthesis pathway in potatoes. Now this, just to touch on it briefly, is a pathway that deals with producing drugs such as atropine and scopolamine within many Solanaceae species such as Datura. But obviously in potato, as a member of that species, that part of the pathway has been defunct. So we're looking to see if we can make this into a platform for producing these drugs in a beneficial way, and taking it away from the hot climates that they're currently produced. But I felt all of that gave me a good experience and a good opportunity to come and become a KTP associate. And when the opportunity turned up to work in the food sciences department at Abertay, leaning on the experience as a sous chef, and between Colbeggie Fruits and looking at what we could do with the plant matter there, I felt it was a good opportunity and a good fit for myself. And again, the rationale for doing KTP was to make that bridge from academia into business. So I felt it was a very beneficial and very timely thing for me at that point. So before delving into the objectives of our KTP, which you can see up here and those may read ahead, A little bit about Colbeggie fruits. Colbeggie fruits are a family-run business dealing with the packaging and distribution of strawberries, blackberries and raspberries from their farm site near Cooper Angus. They deal with contract packaging for another grower in the local area, and you can find their produce in major supermarkets nationally, such as Tesco's, Morrison's and even Asda as of this year. So I'd like to go on to the objectives, and the primary objective, or one of the first objectives, shall we say, was to determine the quantity of outgrade fruit produced each year. Again, I'm not going to have a slide on this. However, last year, just from waste fruit, just from the pack house and outgraded fruit, we had 111 tonnes leave to go on to further downstream manufacturing, which we don't entirely know exactly where it's going to, but it's used in the food manufacturing. Other objectives of this KTP were to develop a green extraction method to allow bioactives to be removed from this outgraded fruit, to understand and develop an encapsulation technique for these bioactives so that we can maintain their activity, and then to incorporate these bioactives once they've either been encapsulated or from the extraction method into a commercial product. And as with all KTPs, obviously it's quite nice to try and get some academic articles out of it at the end as well. So looking at the green extraction methods, we undertook this in a variety of ways. We're quite fortunate at Abertay to have both a small sonicating device, Q-Sonica, as well as that we were able to hire in and borrow a larger 1 kilowatt sonicator from SciMed. But on top of that, we've recently just purchased a 2 kilowatts sonicator as part of a different project. We also have a sonolating homogenizer in that image at the top. So again, that gave us another unique way to try and look at all of these extractions. Not to labour these results too much, but obviously we conducted this using strawberries and blackberries because they have different levels of bioactives within their structures, and we would obviously like to see what we can get out from each of them. But from both of these contour plots, we're able to see that the lower temperatures and sort of a slightly increase in time, you're able to get more of these bioactives out of the tissues from that. So that sort of led our development in which way we were going to go for the extraction methods to do that. And we found sonicating was actually one of the better ways to disrupt the cells and to get these out of in the extraction liquid. As you can see from the graph in the bottom right hand corner, the levels that we were seeing for strawberries and raspberries were actually very similar to the smaller Q-Sonica probe once we sort of started to upgrade into the bigger probe types and using 2 different probe heads as well. Obviously there's a little bit of variation there in the blackberry, but we put that down to sort of the flow cell, and obviously we conducted work on this again without that flow cell, just with the probe, and found that sort of came back up to where we were looking for it. When it came to the encapsulation methods we were looking at, we ended up using spray drying as our primary method. We were using freeze drying as well, but once the time cost implication came into everything and throughputs that we were able to achieve, spray drying was more cost effective for us. In early iterations of this experiment, early workings out of how we were doing everything, we were using a ratio of mannitol and maltodextrin for that. And what we can see here is the percentage recovery worked best for a 1:9 or a 7:3 ratio of mannitol to maltodextrin. However, the phenolic content or the bioactive content within our dried powders in the end was actually best with a 50-50 ratio of the two. So what we were able to show from this is that we are able to draw a powder through. However, the ratios of mannitol to maltodextrin obviously were of importance as to how recovery and phenolic rates achieved and retained through that powder. We also did a response surface methodology work for this to understand the best drying conditions, but that data has not been shown on this slide. So now we come on to our commercial product development. In this, we were using stage gates methodology for working through each different process, and our early iterations were quite horrible, shall we say, and required a lot of work and understanding as to how we can progress and how we can make that a lot better. But what we can see here is our green extracted liquid, our dried powder, which we were using in the early days, and then all the other ingredients that we're utilising to make our product. And one of the unique ingredients we're using that stands us out from the competitors is the use of Ultratex. This is a modified starch thickener to make our product more viscous, but also retain all the flavour and everything we need. And during the cooking process for this, we were taking various samples as ingredients were added at different time points, just to see what the bioactive content was within our product. So we had a clear line throughout this process to see what the end goal should hopefully be. During the commercial product development, we conducted 2 small-scale focus groups, and there's a lot of text on this slide, and I'm not expecting everyone to read it, and I'm not going to go through it, but it's just there for completeness, and I'm sure these presentations will be available later for anyone that actually wants to read through them. But we asked our participants to rank each of the gels they tried, where we felt that we would stand out against for on the market competitors at the moment, and also sort of what price points people are willing to pay for our product. As well as this, we were asking our participants what activities they took part in, and what their choices are when they look at this type of product, the energy gel product that we're looking to try and produce. So the key takeaways for that from us were that taste is the most important, as they don't want to have to force it down their throat. And the developed gel that we had was that it doesn't smell pleasant, that it's less sweet compared to others, but it's not sweet enough. It had a good texture. So we felt again that we had a good couple of things that we could work on in the future, things that we needed to change, such as obviously the smell. If it doesn't smell pleasant, people aren't going to come back and buy it again. The repeat purchase isn't going to be there. And you know, things like texture and sweetness, they were good for us, that we can build on that and obviously just take that forward in the future. Once we felt we had a product that we were a bit more happy with and that we felt we would take forward to manufacture, we got permission to do some small-scale testing with a local running group here in Dundee. Again, because of COVID, it was a very small study, so there were restrictions on the number of participants that could attend. And I'm sure with many other projects, COVID-19 has been a major risk due to notable supply chain difficulties, having to come up with new consumer testing patterns, but also just the willingness of people to come and try new things as well. So once we were able to try this product in the setting of which we hope it was to be used, we were able to find that it worked pretty well compared to something that was on the market already. A few people weren't too interested in it. However, we feel we've got something that we can take to market and is useful for competitors. So we're bringing in to market soon our energy gel line under the brand name Tempo Energy Gel. And our first iteration of this is Mixed Berry. We've had a graphic designer come up with this logo and packaging for us, and each gel contains approximately 7% real fruit, which we feel is higher than what's on the market at the moment. So we feel that's a good understanding and a good way for us to stand out from the competition. As well as developing that, we've been working on developing our website and our social media platforms, so we can hit the ground running once we actually have the gel in hand. We're hoping to have that actually by the end of this month, which will allow us to do some marketing shots up and around Scotland, and then we can have a launch mid to late August. As with all KTPs, we want to try and produce academic articles. So we've got currently 1 article in preparation, once the final results have been gathered due to machine maintenance, and we anticipate to submit this by September. We've got another department within the knowledge base, and once we have the gels in hand, we're looking to do some work with them as well, just to do comparative analysis on bodily function from our gels and what some that are on the market as well. I need to touch on my experience and development opportunities that I've had the opportunity to undertake during this KTP. From travel and networking, I've been to an IFST conference down in Birmingham on developing of foods for ageing populations. I had the opportunity to travel to Barcelona to take part in the Free From Functional Food Expo in 2019, and I went to an industry-specific trade show in 2020 pre-coronavirus. Coronavirus did disrupt some plans to travel to Chicago to attend a food trade show over there. However, we've managed to utilise the funds from that elsewhere to enhance the project. My other development opportunities have been undertaken the CMI Diploma in Management Leadership. I've been involved in the first KTN Innovation Canvas course. I've undertaken Google's Fundamentals of Digital Marketing course, and as you can see, multiple other ones there. And I'm still trying to work my way through my foundation and practitioner levels of Prince 2 project management. So I've had a wealth of experience, and I've just absolutely enjoyed undertaking these opportunities. So what's next is to finalise the marketing messages, bring social and digital media channels online, determine the direction for our next products to bring them to the market, and to then follow up on these and get them through. And I believe that there's an intention for my retention at Colbeggie Fruits. However, due to a small extension to the KTP through a COVID recovery fund, talks for this are on hold. Thank you for listening, and I can welcome any questions.
Thank you, Matt. The world of KTP is fascinating. Even though it's one of my projects, I don't think I'd seen the branding yet. So I love that idea of a tempo energy gel. And I think it's a great project in the sense that you're going the full journey from doing the science and the research, working out what you can do and how to do it, looking at scaling up. And also now you're moving into the branding, the packaging, the consumer testing, and all in the space of one KTP project, despite COVID. So, you know, that's great. My question is, what do you think is the most important thing in convincing your customers, your runners, to take the chance and go with a new gel? Because most athletes are quite protective of their sort of nutrition systems. So what do you think is the most important thing to do to help them make a change?
Probably it's the story and understanding of what's actually within the gel itself. So that comes down to clear messaging. And just being open and honest and transparent in the whole process of making this. It's an understanding of what the fruit is and where it comes from and how it's extracted. It's a clear message forward for that to them. I completely get being a runner. You know, I'm certainly entrenched in using active root for when I'm out and about, and maybe some high five or SIS gels. But it's making sure you've got the other things that back that up. It's having a taste along with that message. It's having the ability to try it. I mean, we had some samples come through last week, which I gave to a couple of friends who normally use talk running gels. And during their event that they were running at the weekend, they tried these, and they said they preferred it and would buy it. And you know, I didn't tell them anything about the gel. I just said try it and be as open and honest as you can. You know, and they were coming back with things of, you know, the flavor's good. It actually tastes like mixed berry. It's not as thick. It's more palatable. So you know, it's the key things that we were wanting to hit. So it's just like I said at the beginning, it's making sure that message is right.
Yeah, and it's all about the marketing as well, isn't it? And the positioning. And I think it's good to see you looking at moving into social media as well. I'm kind of thinking you should maybe have a chat with another associate on our call, Honeyberries, maybe. There's maybe a partnership to be done and a deal to be done there. I'm going to stop there. I'm wondering, Kelly, do you have a question by any chance? I think you do.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back, Matt, to what you were talking about when you were talking about the challenges with your supply chain and your focus groups when you were developing the commercial product. And I just wondered if you'd any specific steps or measures you'd taken to address those challenges.
Yeah, so I think the supply chain obviously was having to be a bit more lenient in expectations, and make sure that, you know, instead of sort of expecting a reply sort of within a week or something, you've got the follow-up calls, but you're giving them a bit more time, just because everyone's working from home and everyone's adjusted to that back in the beginning. As well as that, obviously, it's the whole COVID thing, with people having to isolate. Obviously, when we were having initial discussions with the manufacturer, it was having to take into account that, again, they may have to be isolating, so they won't be at their workplace, and there shouldn't be an expectation for them to reply. With respect to the focus groups, again, it's that whole thing of the lab space and the space that we've been using having to close down, so having to come up with new methods of doing that, and whether that's making the gel and transporting it to people's homes and letting them try from home and do it as a digital and online platform, something similar to this, as a Zoom call or through MS Teams, or even just having an online questionnaire. We were finding we had to adapt quite quickly to that, and that's been quite useful in some of the other little projects that we've been running on for doing that. It's been quite an interesting learning curve, and having to adapt and come up with those methods to do that and just give that a bit more time and flexibility.
Yeah, you've had to be really creative.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
And I had another question, which is a bit more general, but it was, what have you enjoyed most about your KTP experience, Matt?
There's been a few highlights. I think it's been the diversity in the early days as well, and even through COVID as well as last year and last summer, just not exactly knowing which direction we're still going to be going in. We had quite a few ideas coming around and looking at different things. So it was whether we, trying to manufacture a soap or try and brew a beer from the berries or something like that, and just seeing where we go and just trying little things out and seeing what works and seeing what equipment and things that we need to make things actually viable. The whole business side of this, coming up with business plans and applying for funding, is something I'd never done before, and learning about marketing and all of that, it just was completely new and novel. So that's an unexpected challenge. So it's just been the diversity of things, I suppose, is the way to sum that up, of challenges that KTP presented.
Okay, thanks. That's all my questions, Ian.
Thank you, Kelly. And Matt, we say this, I always say this to all associates, is that no innovation project survives contact with the real world. We have an idea about how a project may unfold, or the team do when they write that original proposal, but that very rarely transpires. And I think particularly over the last period where we've had to deal with the external issues to do with COVID, all the associates that I've been involved with, and we've seen a lot because of the Innovation Canvas course now, have had what I call is key adaptability skills. You've all been able to respond to those difficult situations that you found yourselves in and been able to adapt, and what's often termed pivot your projects. And I think all of you on the call should recognize that that's a really important thing to be able to do, particularly if you want to go into a future as an innovator. You need to roll with the challenges that come up and be flexible in how you adapt to them. So can we put our hands together and give Matt a sort of show of appreciation? Great presentation.
As most of the associates on the call know, hopefully there is a LinkedIn group for all associates. And I was actually thinking during Matt's talk, and sorry, Matt, I didn't ask any questions, but like Ian, the postman only knocks once here. So the point about that LinkedIn group is that it's a jumping off point for other things now. There is a Slack group that's been set up by some of the associates, and if anyone who's at the associate conference may have stumbled across that Slack group, but it's also a really good place for connecting with like-minded individuals who perhaps are doing something that tangentially connects to your project. So when Matt was talking about his gels, I was thinking, do you know what, we've got a couple of KTPs in the sort of fitness space. So, one's with a company that makes fitness equipment, so it may be very tangential. But I was wondering, thinking about the challenges that you've got launching a new product into a very competitive space as a fitness gel, whether or not, it would be worthwhile reaching out to the KTP associate network and saying, is there anyone here who's interested in this? Could perhaps, just spread the word on social media, or whether there are any business relationships that might be forged with like-minded companies that are also participating in KTP. So it's worth thinking about anyway. I'm going to post the link into the chat. It's open for KTP associates. If you're not an associate, please don't ask to join because you will be refused. It's a safe space for associates to have these conversations without lots of prying eyes.
So can I just extend the thanks for today? First of all, thanks to all our speakers, to Elliot, Louise and Matt. We really appreciate you taking the time to prepare those presentations and answer those questions. And I have to say, you've all done us proud in terms of KTP with really clear, insightful presentations that take the technology down to a level that we can all enjoy and share in your journey and understand. That's a skill in itself. So congratulations to you all, and the best of luck with the next stage in your innovation projects and your careers. Can I thank Richard again both in terms of questions, but also in terms of his support for KTP and championing it within Innovate UK. We have a true ambassador in Richard, who is passionate about KTP, and I've got some potentially good news for Richard a little bit later, but I'll take that offline. But it does involve something you put in a glass. Next, I'd like to thank Kelly, and I'd like to thank Emma from the KTP team in the north of Scotland. I mean, without teams like that working across the UK, we wouldn't be able to support KTP in the way that we do. And these guys are the unsung heroes, in my opinion, of KTP, because they work with you all to make sure the projects move on streamlessly and solve all our challenges as we go. So a massive thanks to them for organising the seminar and hosting it. And then thanks to all the participants. We don't have an event without participants, and it's great to know that you're out there and listening and contributing questions. And please continue to do that. And these other ways of getting in contact are going to be shared, the LinkedIn, etc., the Slack group and so on. These are going to be shared with you after the event. They're also in the chat. So go out, enjoy, go innovate, stay safe. Thanks for participating. And if the associates would stay on, then I believe Kelly or Emma is going to explain what the networking is going to be like. So thanks, everyone. Have a great day.